Hi. Yes, so I am not an expert in subtitles, but the backstory to this was that in October, November, I was at DMUX, which is Mux's conference, and was sort of racking my brain on how to sort of make structured content and Sanity relevant to video engineers. So I came up with this sort of brief proof of concept where we have, to give you some background, subtitle files are usually stored in a flat file. They look kind of like, let's see if I have here. There we go. So it's really just strings in a line, very, very flat. So I came up with a structure of the individual timestamps kind of being stored in an array. So we've got text, we've got time range, and we've got the person talking. There'll be reasons for why I decided those were important things later. But the idea was that people could sort of edit their subtitles in line if they're getting subtitles or captions from an AI service. Maybe they want to just verify it really quickly. And so the idea was that as you run through the video, you'll see your kind of subtitles load up and show here as we see. So there we go. The issue, I think, that in coming up with this meetup was that this was built in the early days of dev preview, and a lot of the APIs and functions that for making components weren't necessarily there or well documented. And I cobbled together a lot of things from like framer motion code built by by our core engineers who are much more familiar with that sort of thing than me. So if you look at the original sort of code for this, you'll see basically recreating what the array does or what an array item does. And in migrating this to my modern studio, I was really surprised and pleased to see that I don't have to build that many UIs because I'm not that great at it, and I can take advantage and stand on the shoulders of giants of people who are good at that sort of thing. So I try to scaffold this and sort of show everything that's going on here, and sort of see how we can recreate that same functionality without me having to do framer motion stuff, which I'm not good at. So we start, I think, with a structure, a schema. So that same schema will be here. So this transcribed video, it's all being stored in a plugin and being exported, but the export is really, really simple. I'm just exporting my schema types here. So in here, you see I'm really just defining a title, a video. I'm still using the Mux video, a transcript, etc. So in its raw format, I haven't built a great user experience. It's structured. I can use this, I can query it, and I'm really excited about that. But I still have to click into a modal. Things take a while to load. Not my favorite. So I think to resolve this, we want to start building custom components. So right now, this is our vanilla, nothing in there. But if we jump over to, let's say, my next transcription here. So now I've started building out custom components. So in this case, in my transcribed video, I now have an input component. It's really, really simple. If you go to transcribe video, I'm really just taking in the object input props. The transcript video is on my whole document, by the way, which is cool. So I'm really just mapping through the different members, which are just the different fields of my document, and just returning a member field, which is just saying load the default thing for this member. So I am, spoilers, putting in a player here. It's really just the Mux player behind the scenes, but functionally and for my editors, it's going to look pretty much the same. So we've accomplished nothing so far. So my first problem that I wanted to address was thinking about how to sort of make these things sort of load in line and be more visible. So in that case, I can then go over to my next branch here. So to do that, I wanted to take advantage of the sort of timestamp object, which are those objects in that array. So I haven't touched my sort of top level custom component at all. I'm nesting another custom component inside. These things compose really elegantly, which is really fun. I don't need to be this verbose about it. I could have just put that anyway. So for my timestamp, I'm giving it a item. So I'm basically taking over the entire item and saying, load this thing. And in practice, that will look like this. Now my text is in line. I can edit it. I can make changes, which is great. So now I can scroll down. It's a lot of scrolling. So we'll probably address that later. But the idea is that I don't have to build that UI or rebuild anything to do that. So if you look at the actual code for the inline timestamp, I'm really just taking in those item props. So I have render default, which is a lifesaver, and also some other props for the input. So what I'm just telling Sanity is, let's just build, using Sanity UI, of course. Let's just build a stack on the top level. That's render default, which is going to be how those objects look when they're lying in the array, which allows me to sort of still have drag and drop functionality. I don't have to worry about recreating that. But then I'm saying after you do that, also include the input components, which are usually showed in modal. So I'm kind of cheating and showing two things at once, which is great. So now a lot of people really like this functionality. I think a lot of people have asked for editing things in line. It's super easy. I, again, don't have to build a custom UI. I can just use what's there. But again, it's super long and not great. And I think if I were to load up this much longer, I have like a 22-minute video with 555 items, it's going to be, yeah, that little scroll bar is going to be impossible to navigate. And my experience kind of chugs a bit. So in my sort of POC, we saw ourselves filtering to where we were in time in the video. So that's where we can now take advantage of that top level component and still use these other sort of custom components that are nested there, but now they can all talk to each other. So let's see what that looks like. So checking over my next branch here, using a cheat sheet of just Vim and pasting. Great. So now you'll see that in this particular component, it's not as big. I skipped a step, sorry. So it's not as inconceivable. So now actually everything is flatter. I can scroll, it's a lot easier. But now if I click in and see these things, I can now click in and out, and now I have a lot more cleaner experience. Which is great, but it's still clicking. It's still a lot of clicks. So how do I make this more efficient? How do I filter it down to what I need and talk to that top level component? That click functionality, by the way, is also very simple. We're using even more things that are exported from these props. So I have collapse, I have on expand, I have on collapse, and I'm just feeding them into a click handler here. Again, I'm doing very little. I'm really just arranging things that are already existent in Studio, which I feel much more confident about as a developer, that I'm not adding sort of custom logic that I haven't tested at scale. Engineers have. So I can just use it and take advantage of it and put it in different contexts. So great. So now I have these sort of very clickable things. They collapse, they don't collapse. But now I do want to filter like we saw in that POC. So if I jump over to my next description here, and reload. The Studio will hot reload. So this is my demo that I use for enterprises. So it's nested in Next App. So any slowness here is my fault and not Sanity's fault. So now you'll see that we're just showing 5 things right now. I can still click in and out, but now it should scrub and show up with my video here. So as I'm loading in, you'll see things load. If I were to go forward in time, you'll see that these things will now be relevant to like within 5 seconds of where I am. Again, I'm not doing anything too clever. If I go to this transcribe video, now you'll see that I'm just keeping track of the current time. I'm able to listen to my video element here. It has an on-time update prop that's just exported from the Mux player. I set it back to the top level and I set it down into this transcript object. So that's new. We weren't doing anything for the actual array. We weren't doing any custom input for the array. We were doing things for the array item, but not the array itself. And the array itself, we are just feeding in a couple of things. Just the, again, default props that are passed into the member field. And then the current time, which we need to sort of understand what we need to filter, and then render input from the top level. So we're basically, we still want to render the array as Studio would natively render the array. We're just making a few tweaks. So jumping into the transcript here. Again, really just logic to timestamps and SRTs or strings in the Studio as well. I want to make them numbers so that I can, say what's bigger than or what's less than 5 seconds. Once I have that set, I can filter. So there's that 5-second logic here. And so saying, basically, just show me those members, those array items that are within that 10-second window. And then I did have to build some UI. Actually, I copied this from the other thing, which might have come from our core engineers. So there is a button that says show all or filter. So I'm adding a little bit of functionality there. So this show all button will show me everything. And if I filter down to the timestamp, I can do that. I think it's probably good practice not to hide things from my users. So I want to make sure they can see everything. And then, yeah, that's it really. So now those things are following that filter. And then basically I'm doing that render input, that logic from the top level saying, please just render this array as you normally do. But I'm just giving those members that I filtered down here. You'll see some comments from me about not knowing types of things, which is really helpful also for that 555 long array here of one of our other videos. So again, now this thing doesn't load terribly. We don't have any slowdown. Pretty convenient. And you can also see why I'm not great at UIs, because I should have put some padding there. All right, so the last piece I think is that I still have to click, and I'm really trying to reduce clicks. So how do I sort of just show logic to make sure this thing is open when I'm seeing it, as we saw in the POC? So the final step is right here. And now if I go back to my studio, we can now hopefully just automatically open things. So you see that as we go here. Yep. So as I scrub through, we'll open the subtitle stamp that we're currently on. So yeah, it's a little buggy here, but anyway, now it should be smoothed out. So the idea, hopefully, and I didn't get this far, was that, okay, if I see something wrong, like for example, in this video, my name is misspelled and I really want to fix that, I can just click in, make the change, and then save it. So it's just a way of getting exactly the information you need when you need it, and then moving forward from there. Yeah, and the real change here, the only thing to change here is actually just adding a little bit more logic to that transcribe video thing. So that transcript here now has a little bit of logic saying, let's filter. So if this timestamp is within our current time, it's within a window, then let's make it not collapsed. And then our inline timestamp can say, make some logic about whether or not it's collapsed and make a decision there. So now you'll see that there's a little Boolean that's saying if it's collapsed, just render input, as we say, render input's a helper saying just render the thing that we need. We're still using that sort of particular props there, but now we can just open up. And now we also have restored the ability to see the whole thing. So I was blocking that before, but now because I can just open things like this by just going to the timestamp, I don't need necessarily to know that all the other fields, but should I want to have control over that, I can. So yeah, this is really a speed run. I know I covered probably a lot of code of what it's like to kind of create custom components without necessarily building a lot of UI. I'm taking advantage of a ton of things that are just native to the studio. I never have to recreate this remove or duplicate button. I don't have to recreate drag and drop functionality, nor do I want to. But I can make the customizations I need to make life easier for my editors. I think that's it for me. Hopefully it wasn't too too intense. I just felt like I had a lot of stages to cover, and I wanted to make sure that we know that we can scaffold these things. If you are interested in seeing this, I have added this as a draft PR to my demo template on the Sanity.io GitHub, where you can see all those different files. I think I still need to rename some things because as I was developing it, I sort of edited out and copied things to make them kind of scaffold on top of each other. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful. Reach out in the community for any questions. Hopefully we can talk about this.
So the chat is just like
I haven't been looking. I knew I would get distracted, so I was just in my own bubble.
No, that was amazing. Like the things that you were doing in like the short amount of time and just the code that was behind it was fantastic.
It's also in code, right? A lot of it is just helper functions. So that's what I'm so excited about, is that I am not, I mean, making UIs is a delicate art that people study and are passionate about, and it's not something I have a lot of experience in, or at least not, I don't consider myself an expert in. So it's great to take advantage of it.
Yeah, my favorite comment just came through right now from James. I kind of feel like a little kid at a magic show. It's so true. It's like, wow, this is magic.
Super easy. Well, I mean, once I figured out sort of how things sort of fit together, I definitely crashed my studio a few times by making recursive like render inputs. So hopefully no one else has to go through that.
Yeah. And I saw that you shared the repo or kind of at the end. Could we get that link?
Yeah, let me put it in the again. It's not. It's a draft for a reason. I'm still going to test it at scale. My coworkers also use this, so I need to make sure that I'm doing quality control before merging it.
Right on. Thanks for sharing that. Um, so Corey had a question, kind of, and Saskia kind of gave her thoughts behind it. But Corey asked, "This makes me wonder about using portable text for this, where the text is annotated / marked with the timestamps. I'm curious if that was something that was considered, or if there are any thoughts about that approach."
I also considered it actually. I mean, it's a good call. Heavybit, I believe, for their Heavybit uses Sanity, and for their podcast, they have a really great. I mean, I think that generally having transcript is great for accessibility and findability. They do use portable text. They annotate every line with the timestamp. I think that's totally fine too. I was kind of just having fun. Portable text might be easier to consume. I think the idea, hopefully, is that all those other things too annotate with might be uh, easier in an object, but I haven't consumed this content yet. I haven't put it on the front end. I think that would give me a stronger opinion. I know someone in the chat wanted like more decisive, prescriptive things, but the honest answer is I don't have enough information yet. But I do know that Heavybit uses at scale, so that's good evidence.
Yeah, right on. Well, awesome presentation, awesome demo. Yeah, you showed us how to do it, and I still don't believe it. Is one of the comments. So awesome stuff. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing that GitHub repo. Definitely check that out if you're interested in looking more into the code. But yeah, thank you, Carolina, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and all the stuff with the subtitles and structured content.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. See you.